The mystery shoe that took Instagram by storm is finally out, and we know it's now named the Mizuno Neo Vista. But does it live up to the hype? And do plates and responsive foams belong in daily trainers? Let's break it down. This is the Mizuno Neo Vista. What's up everyone, I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod, and today you're watching Rad Dad Bod TV, where we review running shoes. Now we're going to be talking about the Mizuno Neo Vista, and right off the bat, I do have to say, I know people are going to comment about my pronunciation of Mizuno. It is a Japanese last name. I work with the brand, and am half Japanese and lived there for over 10 years. That is actually how you pronounce the brand, though many people pronounce it differently just because of the Americanization of the brand. That being said, I don't care how you pronounce it, and you shouldn't care how I pronounce it, but you should know that it is Mizuno based on the brand itself. Let's dive into the review and talk about some disclaimers and disclosures. I was provided this shoe directly from the brand for the purpose of review. That being said, I was not paid for this review, nor was I asked to make any specific type of video. All that being said, no one gets to watch the review beforehand, including Mizuno, and all thoughts are entirely my own. With that out of the way, let's talk about the intended use of the shoe. The Mizuno Neo Vista is actually designed for daily training, which is kind of crazy because Mizuno really put in a ton of just high-end specs into this shoe. It's almost like kind of a concept shoe or an experimental shoe in a lot of ways, and we'll break down a bunch of the different aspects of it. But as such, we're going to be evaluating it as a daily use shoe because that's what Mizuno designed it for. As far as price point goes, it comes in at $180, which for the amount of tech that they put into it, technically is actually on the lower end because I wouldn't compare this to most daily trainers, but seeing that Mizuno is categorizing it as a daily trainer, it would be expensive for that use in particular. Personally, I see this more as a super trainer because it has such a high stack height as well as kind of a plate in the shoe. And so it's more in lines in my head with something like the Hoka Skyward X or the New Balance SC Trainer, right? Specs wise, it's very, very similar to those. And so it's kind of a weird spot overall. It's kind of interesting how Mizuno is choosing to categorize this shoe themselves. Now talking about specs, this shoe comes in at 9.1 ounces, which for a shoe with this much foam and a plate is actually on the lighter side. You would normally expect this type of shoe to be closer to the 10-ounce mark. So all in all, pretty decent weight for what it is. Now this is where it starts to get a little bit crazy. You have a 53, I believe, yes, 53 millimeter stack height in the heel and a 45 millimeter stack height in the forefoot for a 5 millimeter heel to toe drop. So that is a crazy heel stack and forefoot stack overall, and this would be illegal for race usage for any like actual professional marathon runners, because once you get over that 40 millimeter mark, it's deemed as illegal and giving you an unfair advantage. From a fit standpoint, it's an interesting fit overall, as it usually is when you have kind of these knit uppers. So the heel itself is very, very snug, and your heel does stay in place due to kind of the curvature of the shoe. The forefoot itself, or kind of the toe box I should say actually, is fairly roomy overall, gives your toes a lot of space to splay, but the midfoot in my opinion is very, very narrow, and you actually end up kind of hanging over the midsole quite a bit. So if you are a wide-footed runner, probably not the shoe for you. Now in terms of kind of lengthwise, I do feel like they fit true to size, maybe a little bit on the long end even, but I would not necessarily half size down or half size up due to the other aspects of the fit. Now talking about that upper, obviously we have this mesh, I believe it's like 90% recycled upper, and it's that kind of sock-like fit overall. You can see it there, it's got those perforations kind of all throughout the shoe, and I would say that for the most part it is a very, very breathable upper, and it's comfortable too. I like these sock-like fits in theory. I think that they fit very, very comfortably, but I do have some beef with it overall. One of the biggest things with the sock-like fit like this, especially when you kind of have like the elasticity that comes along with a sock-like upper like this, is that my foot tends to shift around quite a bit in the shoe. And that paired with the fact that that midfoot is so narrow and you hang over the edge of the midsole there on the kind of the interior arch, it just kind of leaves you floating around in the shoe, and that lockdown is not great, and it's hard to get the lockdown that you want as well when you're dealing with the sock-like uppers as opposed to like a separate tongue. Now, something to note, I did not experience this, but I did hear some had some kind of rubbing on the Achilles and the heel there, just with kind of how that heel counter works. It is flexible, but there is some structure there, and it is a little bit rough there, but I always wear kind of quarter length socks, and I didn't have any issues with that whatsoever. In fact, the only place I was really getting hot spots was actually on the balls of my feet, because my feet were shifting in the shoe due to the elasticity of the upper itself. So while I did find it very comfortable, while I did find it very breathable, the overall lockdown made it really, really hard for me to kind of enjoy the shoe, especially at slightly faster paces where it became more and more obvious that my foot was shifting. Now, from a midsole standpoint, you have Mizuno Energy Next, which is Mizuno's super foam from what I believe or what I understand, and I do think you have a dual density midsole if I'm not mistaken, with a slightly firmer foam up top and then a slightly softer, more responsive foam on the bottom. But I think technically they are still both Energy Next. Along with the nice bouncy responsive foam, you also have a plant-based plate, which I think is technically fiberglass if I'm not mistaken, and so that adds a little bit of snap and a little bit of pop to the shoe as well. So you can see why I was kind of saying that this feels a little bit more like a super trainer, even though they are calling it a daily trainer or an up-tempo daily trainer. There's just a lot of tech and a lot of things in the shoe that kind of make it a little bit more of a premium product. As far as kind of the feel underfoot, the shoe is soft and comfortable and plush, and it does feel like it wants to go a little bit faster because of that plate and because of that kind of responsive supercritical foam. My issue with it is the fit and lockdown of the shoe do not feel comfortable at faster paces. So this is one of those weird situations where I think that if the lockdown was better, or maybe there was a different upper on the shoe, then I would say that the pace versatility was actually really, really good. But the problem is when you do go fast in the shoe, and the shoe wants to go a little bit faster, in my opinion, than easy runs, than kind of your daily mileage, then you just end up shifting around in the shoe too much that it kind of doesn't feel comfortable at that pace. So I tried this for some track repeats, I tried this for long runs, I tried this for daily runs, I tried this for tempo kind of threshold runs, and I think where it feels kind of the most comfortable is in that upper easy, lower moderate, maybe in that kind of tempo zone, that steady running zone. Felt really, really nice there. But as far as like daily mileage, I felt like it was comfortable but wanted to go a little bit faster than I wanted to on easy days. So it's not a shoe that I would probably reach for daily, but I know a lot of runners have really enjoyed it for that daily usage. So as always, I'm trying to speak more about what the foam feels like, where it is bouncy, it is nice, it is comfortable, it is soft, it's not overly squishy, it's definitely not firm, but how you choose to use that foam may differ depending on the overall experience that you're having kind of with that upper. Something I want to talk about, because we were just talking about the upper and we're talking about the midsole, I think part of maybe the flaw of the shoe is most of the weight is in the bottom half of the shoe because you have the knit upper, right? So I almost feel like had they gone for a 10-ounce shoe and done a little bit more robust of an upper or a little bit more structured upper, then the balance might have been a little bit better. But it kind of almost feels like you're just strapped onto the midsole and not super securely. So I like the overall feel of the midsole underfoot. It's kind of the fit of the shoe that fights me overall, not necessarily the sensation underfoot. Now from an outsole perspective, you have a G3 rubber and then you have this big cutout, which adds some stability to the shoe. And I do believe that without this cutout, the shoe would actually be incredibly unstable. So I was glad to see that because there was a little bit of stability. This is not a shoe for overpronators by any means. The rubber is a G3 rubber from what I understand. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it has some really good durability and overall protection for the shoe. Now, this is not a shoe that I would recommend that you take out on varying terrain by any means. I don't think that you're going to fare well, but the outsole does a good job of being able to take care of you and protect your feet and keep you running even if there is a little bit of moisture or anything on the ground. Now, who's this shoe for? Honestly, it really depends. I think that some high-level runners or runners who are a little bit faster or who are just putting on a ton of miles, honestly, they may enjoy this as a daily use shoe. I know that there were quite a few people that I saw, other reviewers, who were using this as a daily trainer and really, really enjoying it. And I do think that's where it feels best, is kind of closer to that easy zone. But I, again, don't feel like it was that productive for me at an easy pace. But if you're someone who does, yes, run a lot of miles, maybe you have a narrower midfoot overall and you like that sock-like fit, then this is going to be a really good kind of bouncy everyday option for you. That's probably going to save your legs quite a bit. So I think if you're a high volume runner, right, then this is going to be a really, really good overall option for you. If you're a fairly new runner, or if you're someone who, is looking for kind of a plated trainer, this is probably not where I would start. I would maybe look at something that's going to be a little bit more stable overall, a little bit more accommodating fit, something maybe like the SC trainer, or something that's non-plated, honestly. As far as comparisons go, I have not run in the Mizuno Wave Rebellion Flash 2 just yet, but this is kind of more of the up-tempo version, or the like the stripped down or dumbed down version of the Wave Rebellion Pro 2. This may end up being what I wished the Neo Vista was in terms of like overall lockdown, and I wonder, because the tooling or the setup of the midsoles are a little bit different, I just wonder if you took the Wave Rebellion Flash upper and threw it on the midsole of the Neo Vista, how that would fare overall. So just kind of an interesting experiment. But just looking at these two shoes and also the Wave Rebellion Pro, like, you can't help but say, like, it's really cool to see brands really experimenting with the tech and really kind of trying new things, when a lot of the brands are just kind of doing the same, like, oh, just throw max cushion, like we're getting max cushion everything. Mizuno is saying, like, what happens if we take away the heel of a shoe, right? Or something along those lines. So it is cool to see. I'm a fan of what they're doing. And while my feet have not vibed super well with kind of some of the new innovations thus far, I am excited to see what they continue to do, and I've seen some flashes of what their 2025 lineup may look like. So again, just excited to see the direction of the brand overall. Now, if you are evaluating this as a super trainer, which is how I think you should evaluate it, just kind of speaking in comparison to something like the Hoka Skyward X, this is going to be a much lighter option, a much softer overall option underfoot than the Skyward X. And I think for most people, it's probably going to feel a little bit smoother than the Skyward X, which felt a little bit blocky at times. What's interesting is when comparing it to another kind of super trainer, which I would say like the Super Comp trainer from New Balance, specifically the One, the Neo Vista kind of feels like the daily training companion to the Super Comp trainer in a weird way. So I do understand kind of where Mizuno was going with this as kind of your daily option, because it's just clear that it wasn't necessarily built to go super fast, but it was built to kind of assist your foot. And so all in all, I think a couple of things could have been different and could have made this really, really cool. And I'm curious to see if they do a Neo Vista too. Just some final thoughts on the shoe. Overall, I love the direction that Mizuno is going. I love that they are experimenting. I love that they're trying new things. And I love that they were, kind of the big mystery shoe of 2024. It's definitely not something that I expected from Mizuno coming off of the running event last November, just kind of having everyone talk about them when there were all these other really cool innovations on the market. So props to Mizuno for putting themselves out there and trying some new things. For me, I like the shoe. I don't love the shoe. I feel like the fit just really missed the mark. And this isn't a Mizuno thing, by the way. I think this is more of a knit upper thing. I have rarely tried a knit upper that I liked. And I think it just comes down to the fact that they become a little bit too stretchy, that they have a little bit too much give. They don't give you the lockdown that you need. And so We'll see what they do in the future. We'll see if we get a Neo Vista 2 next year or something along those lines. But all in all, I think that they have a little bit of work to do, but I like the direction that they're headed. Now, if you're still watching the video, I sure appreciate it. Please take a second and give me a like and a follow if you haven't already. And let me know if you have any questions about the Neo Vista. Obviously, it was one of the more anticipated shoes this year, so there's a lot of curiosity, a lot of hype around it. And with that, I'll leave you with one question before we log off today, which is, what are your thoughts on a knit upper? Are you a fan, or do you feel like it's just kind of a gimmick? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks, everyone.